We like to try to do this is to introduce yourself, you know,
Your maiden name.
when you were born, the year you were born, and where you were born,
Here, so I won't make you
and then we'll try to talk about your childhood a little bit and go from there. And then when we get when you got married and stuff, I'll take a couple shots and that stuff.
Well, I've written down a few things
All right.
here.
So why don't we start? Here, go ahead. I'll turn this on, and go ahead. Start.
Start?
Yeah, just talk to me.
Okay. Okay. My name is Delphia Florence. That's not right. Jones. Should I put? Now is that going?
I can edit this all over the place. I can stop and go. So if you want to go back up and start all over, go ahead. Just give me take a second.
I was born, is what I meant to say. I was born Delphia Florence Jones. My dad's name was Andrew Thomas Jones, and my mother was Alice Elizabeth Patterson. I was born on March the 6th, 1908, in Barr Township, Davis County, Indiana. When I was 6 years old, my sister and brother-in-law took me to live with them. They kept me and put me through high school. My mother and father and a sister Margaret and a brother Andrew died in a typhoid epidemic in Lagodi. And that left 5 of us children.
You know what year that was?
Hmm?
You know what year that was?
The year
they died?
Well,
Penny Chen.
I was 6. I was born 1908. 1902.
Oh.
1902. No, I was 6 when they died.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah.
In 1914, wasn't it?
About 1914. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And at 7 years old, I started to school at St. Simon's and attended St. Simon's Academy in high school. I graduated from Washington Catholic High School in 1927. And there were 16 girls in our class and 12 boys. They called them the Sweet 16 and the Dirty Dozen. I think that's the important things there. During high school, I worked for George the Greek at his cafeteria and at Some Brothers on East Main Street. It was a newly decorated cafeteria, a beautiful place, and I was the first female worker they ever hired. They'd always had boys and men around there. And, it was so pretty. They had booths up and down the sides and had round tables and 4 chairs in the center. And after so long a time, they put a jukebox in the back end so the young kids could dance back there and all. And I was real proud of that place. And there's several of my friends worked there, but I was the first female worker that worked there. I liked it really well. And I graduated from high school in 1927. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I needed a job. And one of the, not a boyfriend, but a fellow that I knew, was going to have an operation. He worked at the Daily Times office. And he asked me if I'd come down and work for a while, till he got out of the hospital. I told him okay, and when he got through his operation and came back, they didn't tell me to leave, they kept me, and I worked until the 15th day of August, and I got a telephone call from P.A. Kennedy Company, and Paul Kennedy asked me to go to work for him. And I said something to them, they said, well, they just didn't want to lay me off, they knew I needed the work, so they kept me through my son. And I worked at Kennedy's for 8.5 years. And in the meantime, I met Doug. he knew Mr. Kennedy before I did. He worked at Oden. And one day he came down to Washington. He was with the Indiana Bell employee. And he saw me on the front porch where I lived, and he asked to meet me. Well, I don't think we met right at that time, but just a little later he called me and asked me for a date. And we lived together 7.5 years. We got married. He worked at Oden. We went to Oden to live. And we lived there about a year and a half, wasn't it?
Yes.
Then he worked in Connersville for a while. And then we went back to, we built our apartments in Oden. And one day we came down to visit Mr. Kennedy, and
Just keep going.
Oh.
Just keep going. I'm just
Okay.
getting two shot of it.
we came down to visit Mr. Kennedy, and while we were there, he said, "Beth, how about going to work for me?" So he gave him a job. And Beth worked there for 40 years. And he was manager, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
What did they do there?
For 25 years.
What did the company do? What did they make?
It'd be a wholesale,
Wholesale.
retail,
It's a-
vending.
It was a candy and cigarette retail store and a wholesale
Mm.
company. You didn't do any of the traveling, did you? You stayed there at the store.
No, I didn't.
But he'd been there for a while, Mr. Kennedy took a heart attack. He had a heart attack. And he always said he didn't want his place of business put on block, you know. But that's what happened to it. And E. Beerhouse of Vincennes bought the company. And they told Duff that they would buy it if he would manage it for them. So that's when he became manager. So he was there until he was almost 80. He worked, when did you retire? 70 something?
No, I forget the date.
Well, anyway, he helped them off and on after that, and he worked until he was 80, and he had all he could take. But going back to when Mother and Dad died, my sister Doris took me and brought me down to Washington, and my cousin Julian Bowling took my younger sister, and then there was 2 boys, and they didn't know what they were going to do, where they were going to put them, where they were going to go, you know. And well, Homer was just old enough, your dad, your grandpa, to go to service. And they made an exception and took Earl. There's a year's difference there.
So how old were all you guys? I mean, you were 6?
I
When your parents died, you were 6?
Yes, and I went to school at St. John's Lagodi for just part-time, but it was just sickness, and they said the house was full of doctors, nurses, and hired help. And I didn't get to go to school very much, therefore I didn't get promoted. And they started me over down here, which I've always been glad because I took my 12 years here, you know. And I graduated here, and all 3 of my daughters graduated down at Washington Catholic High School. We've always been real proud of it. We're still trying to hold on and keep going, but it's hard. It's getting awfully expensive for us, but we're still trying. This Saturday starts our social. Every summer we have a big social. We try to raise, quite a bit of money that way. And now they're getting into a lot of this bingo. I'm not too fond of that, but that's the way it is. But anyway, Homer and Earl were in Germany when they were in service, both of them. And when they came back, why, Homer married Aurelia Troxler from Jasper, and Earl married Lillian Brewer from Washington. They lived in Indianapolis. They had 2 children, Carol, and then they lost an infant. And Homer you have 5, don't you?
4.
4?
Yeah.
4 in your family. And I've always been real close to Homer and Aurelia. I went down there to visit a lot of times during high school, and one time Rudy was hanging up clothes. We were out in the yard, and Junior ran out in the road, and she says, "My God, Junior, come here once." And I thought, I'll never forget that expression. I could just see her yet, you know, getting Junior that. But he didn't get hurt or anything, but it, you know, kind of scared us all. But I always enjoyed going down there, and your grandmother and grandfather lived where Homer, where William finally wound up living, you know. And I had a lot of nice times down there. One time, Lily was going to Germany to visit some of her relatives over there. And she says, "You know what? I don't even have a hat to wear." So they wear hats and scarves. And I said, "I'll get you one. I've got a hat and a scarf." So she took my hat to Germany with her. I never will forget that one. You know, I don't remember much about Junior dying. It was, you know, they brought him back, but I didn't know he'd been sick or anything. We see Tommy ever so often, and I hope they'll be down there Sunday.
Yeah.
And Norbert we'll see ever so often. His wife's very poorly, and she, you know. And of course, when they lost their children, the girl they lost, that was sad. We went down to the mortuary. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I take that back. It was the son. They lost a son too, didn't they? The son living down.
No.
Right.
What do you remember about Homer? What kind of guy was he? You know,
Well, when we lived in Lagodi, my dad had a delivery stable. And I can yet see the big broad horses. When I was just a little kid, you
Yeah.
know, when we go in there. And I've been told this now, that Dad owned the first car that was in Lagodi, what they had in Lagodi. They rented out buggies and so on, you know. Well, they got this car to rent out to people. And that is where Homer and Earl started mechanic there in Lagodi. And Homer, I guess, wound up as a mechanic all his life in Jasper. And Earl did the same thing in Lagodi. It stayed with them all the time. They never had a college education. I mean, people didn't, they just learned, you know. But when we look at our car now, and when I think about them pull that little front up on that Ford in Lagodi, wasn't a lot of difference in that mechanism. Awful lot. But Homer was always a hard worker. He was good, and he loved Ray and the family. I think they always got along. As far as I could see, I never saw any troubles or anything. We got along nicely. And the old lady was a little farther away. She passed away, and then he was in the Carmel nursing home, and he passed away just a week ago year ago Christmas. All right. Is there anything else in the family?
oh, I don't know. Maybe about you. What's some of your memories about, you know, years ago when you didn't have TV and stuff? Well, what did you used to do with the family? Do you remember like some of your favorite memories to do? Where did you go for like fun and for weekends and stuff? What was some of the outings like
Well,
before
you know,
TV?
there were too many places to go. We didn't have a car, you know. But I remember one time after my brother-in-law bought a car with open, you know, curtains, you know, we drove up to Lagodi one day, and it took us all day to go to Lagodi and visit a little while and come back. My sister married a Bullock, and they lived out close to St. Mary's Bar Township. And I can remember yet going out there, and she'd have homemade bread and homemade jelly, homemade everything, you know, and it was delightful. And usually before we'd start back, we'd go into Lagodi, and they'd have cheese and crackers in a barrel,
Yeah.
and cheese that cut the hunks off of, you know, and then we'd lunch on our way home, you know. But as far as running around, we went to the theater, and there were some dances around, but I never was too much on dancing.
Remember what your first movie might have been? First movie you might have went and saw?
What was the first movie you saw
You remember?
when you went to the theater? was the first thing you saw in the theater?
I don't know. We just took it as a kid.
Was it Rudolph Valentino?
Well, after Duff and I, or while we were going together, we went together for 7.5 years. We didn't have anything to get married
Yeah.
on. And we went together quite a while, but we were both trying to save money, and he bought him a car, and he had that paid for. And,
What kind of car?
Hmm?
What kind of car was it?
Ford. He's owned a Ford all his life.
It was a Ford, one of the first V8 motors.
Oh, it is. Just a minute.
Hold on.
It was the kind you crank.
Oh, the Model A? Model T?
Let me just stop this for a minute. This is
It's sticking.
a good tape for
I